Now, before we begin the video, I definitely want to get the word out. Happy birthday, Sonic! And Eggman, and Shadow, and Rouge, and Jet, and Silver. Okay, the point is, a lot of characters were born on this day, and by born I mean they were conceptualized and released in their debut games, but, you know, who's keeping track of birthdays? Anyway, back on topic. Yeah, 27 years of Sonic the Hedgehog. Now, I know a lot of people say this, but it's amazing that Sonic has been around for so long. It seems like just yesterday was the 20th anniversary with Sonic Generations on the horizon. Now, originally I wanted to stream some of my favorite Sonic games for the 27th, but the consoles the games are on don't like my streaming equipment. Looking at you, PlayStation 3. So, as a sort of plan B, I guess you could say, I decided to make a top 5 video. Yeah, so original, I know. I wanted to at least get something meaningful out there for Sonic's birthday, since he means so much to me, so how about I shed some light on why I love the Sonic games that I gush over. There aren't going to be any real rules or restrictions to this list, like no spin-offs, or they have to be an even mishmash of both classic and modern games, or they have to be made by Sonic Team. So pretty much every game is on the table. So, with that out of the way, let's run right into EvanUn0's Top 5 Sonic the Hedgehog games. Woohoo! At number 5, we have Sonic and the Black Knight, released for the Wii in 2009. Does anybody remember the Sonic Storybook series? You know, those 2 games on the Wii that Sega tried where Sonic goes into old stories and has to save the world from one of the threats? They were actually pretty fun. I know that they're kind of divided in the fandom, but honestly it was a really interesting take and it had some of the more interesting moments and stories that the series has seen. Black Knight in specific has Sonic go into the medieval times of King Arthur, who's been corrupted and is wreaking havoc all across the kingdom. It's up to Sonic to strike King Arthur down and to bring peace to that land once more. I know what a lot of people are thinking. Sonic? With a sword? What kind of Final Fantasy BS is this? But honestly, if you think about it, Sonic with a sword is a good idea. Sonic's attacks already come from being really high collision and really sharp because of his quills. Now add a sword to that, and you make him a living propeller blade. The sword is essentially having Sonic say, what would I need so that people truly would not mess with me? I mean, let's be honest, if you saw Sonic coming at you at 230 miles an hour with a sword, you would be terrified. That would be it. You would have no counter. You would have no way of getting out of that. Accept your fate. Now, while I admit that the controls do need work and a little bit of rethinking, can you really blame Sega and Sonic Team? This was on the Wii, the era of throw motion controls into every game because we were so fascinated with it. So they could have buffed it out a little bit more, but I don't know. I still think it's pretty nice that you can pull off some interesting combos. And while it's a waggle fest, it's a fun waggle fest. But where I feel this game really shines is in its presentation. Graphically, the game is gorgeous, and that's saying something considering that the Wii is a standard definition console. There are individual blades of grass in the grassland areas, and all of the character models look on point, and they don't look awkward like some of the previous Sonic models have been. The environments are lush and believable, making it seem like this really does take place in medieval Europe. And the music? Well, of course we have Jun Sonoy on here, and we have Crush 40, which made not one, but multiple different songs for this game. When you get them on a game, you know that this is going to have great sound direction. My personal favorite thing about this game, though, is the story and the way that the characters are written. This was the last game that I felt had a really nuanced, mellowed out Sonic who wasn't obsessed with spouting one-liners and making cheesy jokes. As we all know, Sonic is very act, don't think, and in this game, as well as Sonic and the Secret Rings, its technical predecessor, it gets Sonic in some trouble. As a result, we get to see a more empathetic side of Sonic, such as the scene where we see Sonic get on the same level as a little girl, telling her that he will put his trials on hold to save her family and the rest of that village from a dragon, really demonstrating Sonic's selfless side. Even the scene where Sonic tells Gawain the Echidna, "Isn't there more to being a knight than serving a king?" is delivered so beautifully. One of the quotes in specific and one of the kind of themes in this game took me by surprise in particular. The scene where Sonic first pulls Caliburn out of the stone and says, "I can't be the hero all the time." I like seeing the attention to Sonic's moral compass. In a lot of his earlier biographies, Sonic didn't like being called a hero and he strictly ran by his own rules. It demonstrates a more believable side of Sonic, knowing that he can't always be the good guy and sometimes has to play by his own rules to get things done. If sometimes to do some good, you gotta be the bad guy, you know? One more final point of interest is the fan service in this game. You get to play as Shadow, Knuckles, and Blaze and their medieval counterparts, and they all have their own unique playstyles. They also have some of their own themes from previous games play before their boss fights. And one of the coolest things is that you can even unlock an entire gallery of artwork by fans sent into Sega. That's so cool! It's obvious that Sonic and the Black Knight was a huge passion project, and while it's not perfect, I really appreciate it for what it is, and that makes it one of my all-time favorite Sonic the Hedgehog games. By the way, this was the best performance by the English dub cast. I love you, Jason Griffith. I hope you're well. Coming in at number 4 is Sonic 3 and Knuckles for the Sega Genesis, released in 1994. You all saw this coming, I mean, what'd you expect? Sonic CD? But still a very good game. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is sort of considered the peak of Sonic's entire career. It has pretty much everything you'd want. 3 playable characters, all with their unique playstyles, large levels with all these branching paths which accommodate each character's abilities, incredible music, incredible level themes, level design, the fact that you can log on Sonic 2 to Sonic and Knuckles as well to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2 to find even more paths which you couldn't find previously. Whew! This is a big game, let me tell you something. A little history lesson for those who don't know. Originally, Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles were meant to be one big game, but because of time constraints and space restraints on the cartridge, they had to split it up into 2 parts, releasing Sonic 3 in February of 1994, while Sonic and Knuckles came in October. This method was dubbed lock-on technology, which, like a lot of other people have said, is basically just classic day DLC. It only ever worked with 2 other Sonic games, but the concept is still pretty interesting. Not much else to say with Sonic 3 and Knuckles, really. It's just an incredible experience. I remember the days back in 2011 where I'd play this on my Genesis, because I did own a Genesis at the time. This was when I was in high school, and I would just play it at night on my TV that I have in my room, the really low quality, like 240p TVs. A lot of good times. Oh, and speaking of 2011... Coming in at number 3, we have Sonic Generations, released in 2011 for the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, the PC, and it even had a 3DS counterpart. Sonic Generations was the culmination of the best of Sonic from the past 20 years. Having both classic side-scrolling gameplay and fast-paced 3D gameplay, Sonic Generations took multiple levels from previous Sonic games and remade them completely. 3 eras. 2 Sonics, 1 epic adventure, an experience of a lifetime. Sonic Generations is some of the most hyped up I've ever been for a video game. Seeing 2 Sonics run alongside together was a dream come true for 14-year-old me. I read every article, every interview, watched pretty much all of the gameplay footage either from E3 or from the official trailers on the official YouTube channel. I was prepared! Come November 1st, 2011, I was blown away. It still stands as one of my most influential games of all time, and was easily my Game of the Year 2011. Sonic Generations even has one of the best modding communities I've seen for any game. People have remade old levels and have even made entire new games out of Generations mods. Unleashed project, anybody? It's so relaxing to see that Sonic Generations still stands the test of time and space. Speeding through at number 2 is Sonic Mania for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC, released in 2017. So, we can all agree that Sonic Mania pretty much blew all of us out of the water, right? Right? This was a game made by fans, for fans. Christian Whitehead, Stealth, and a wealth of other Sonic fans came together to make one of the most memorable experiences that this franchise has seen so far, and maybe even will ever see. Sonic Mania is pretty much a direct sequel to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, remixing fan-favorite zones like Green Hill and Chemical Plant, and adding fantastic new zones, Press Garden, Studiopolis, Mirage Saloon, and Titanic Monarch. I'm forever grateful that Takashi Iizuka and the rest of Sega and Sonic Team allowed Christian Whitehead and the rest of his cronies to make this fantastic experience, to bring it to light, and to give us all a brand new taste of classic Sonic. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles all team up to defeat Dr. Eggman and his new line of robots, the Hard-Boiled Heavies, also uncovering the mysteries behind the mystical Phantom Ruby. New abilities like Sonic's Drop Dash, which is an insta-spin dash, are a welcome addition to his repertoire of moves. The game has a fantastic soundtrack composed primarily by T. Lopes. It was so good it even won a few awards. Yeah, buddy, that's what I'm talking about! Woo! Sonic Mania is something that everyone should experience. Sonic fans, classic platformer fans, video game fans in general. And with Sonic Mania Plus coming out next month, there is no reason not to pick it up. Buy the Mania, for the Mania, the Sonic Mania is back in full force. Now, before we get to number 1, I do want to make a few more honorable mentions, if at all possible. Not all of these choices are super high on the list, but they mean a lot to me personally, and for one reason or another I have sentimental value towards them. First, we have Sonic Advanced for the Game Boy Advance, released in 2002. This was my very first Sonic game, and as a 5-year-old Evan, I had no idea what was going on. I was very much a Pokemon and Disney kid back then, like, strictly those things. And I was never very good at it, but it was still really fun to see. The concept of multiple playable characters was actually introduced to me through this game, which I always thought was interesting. A specific memory I have with Advanced as a kid is when I first saw the opening cutscene, I called Dr. Eggman the Egg Guy. And I swear I hadn't really heard of Sonic before then, so I don't know how I got that kinda right. I was a weird kid back then. Sonic Adventure 1 is also a game I feel the need to talk about. While Advance was my first Sonic game, Sonic Adventure was my first, Sonic game that really got me full force in the series. After that, I became a fan of it, and I started buying all the other games, doing research and stuff, looking into, the history of Sonic and whatnot. Adventure 1 was definitely that push I needed. And, strangely enough, I picked up Adventure 1 and the Dreamcast around the Dreamcast's 10th anniversary, so, maybe it was fate. While I definitely have some strong opinions on it today, I cannot deny that it did a lot for me as a kid, and I'm so grateful for it. And in that regard, I also feel this way about Sonic Adventure 2, slightly to a lesser extent though. I didn't play that one until a little later. Anyway, what is my favorite Sonic the Hedgehog game of all time? The other day when I was hanging out with my friends, we were talking about God of War, and my friend asked me, "Evan, have you ever played any of the games? Which one is your favorite?" And I replied with, Sonic Unleashed. That's a God of War game, right? Sonic Unleashed was released on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and even had a standard definition version for the PS2 and the Wii in 2008. I know, this is one of the more divisive games in the fanbase, but let me explain. To me, Sonic Unleashed is the epitome of a big-budget passion project. Throughout the game, you'll definitely see a lot of care and time and passion was put into pretty much every corner of this game. Honestly, at times, Sonic Unleashed felt like it could have passed for a movie. Everything has a grand, cinematic feel to it, and honestly, no other Sonic game has come close to replicating it. The game looks gorgeous, every environment is so beautifully crafted. They found a good way to stylize the humans so that Sonic doesn't look too out of place. The soundtrack is varied with a lot of different styles and is some of Tomoya Otani's best work. But of course what really gets people is the gameplay. This was the first console mainline Sonic game to introduce the boost, and while it's usually very divisive on what people think of it, I think this was a really good sort of blueprint foundation for console boost Sonic games. Sonic has a lot of interesting little trinkets in his repertoire. The sort of slide, the stomp. These abilities work in conjunction with each other, and they make Sonic feel more cohesive with how he moves. The levels are long, but they're not too long, and they're packed with multiple different routes, and honestly, each time you play through them, they feel fun and fresh. But what about the Werehog? I personally found the Werehog to be kind of inoffensive, but in a good way. I feel like it wasn't bad or anything, it just needed a little bit of work. Like maybe there could have been more with parkour-like movements and maybe less forced fights. And maybe even tweak the platforming a bit. I think we would have had something that's a little bit more well-received. Every now and then, I kinda need a game where I can just senselessly beat things up, so Sonic Unleashed really was up my alley for that. A lot of Sonic Unleashed's problems or criticisms I can either forgive, or I simply just don't see or agree with some of them. Now, brace yourself, because this is gonna get a bit more sentimental, mushy, gooey. my own personal experience, really. So when I first really got into Sonic, I was in middle school, high school, and those were some of the worst years of my life. I didn't really have any friends, and I was just starting to cope with things like my depression and whatnot, and it was very hard because I felt like I didn't have anyone I could really go to. So I sort of saw Sonic as an outlet for me to, not take my rage out on anything, of course, but to just relax and sort of feel wanted in this franchise that I felt was up my alley. I felt I could relate to, I felt I could learn a lot from. I just had a lot of fun playing it, and it was nice to come home from a really stressful day of school where almost every day I was bullied excessively, and just feel like I belonged, if that makes any sense. Around this time is also when I first learned that I had autism. You'd go, haha, Sonic and autism, whatever. But, like I said, I just felt like Sonic kinda saved me. I know that sounds really silly, but you gotta remember, this is kind of all that I had. I didn't really have any friends to go to. At the time, I felt like my family didn't understand me. This is how I kind of expressed myself. For Sonic Unleashed in specific, however, Unleashed was the first Sonic game that I ever beat on my own, both the Wii version and the 360 version, and eventually the PS3 version, and it felt good, because I had followed through the entire story, and I beat all the levels, and it just ended on this really powerful note for me. I love Unleashed's story, and it made me cry at the end. It's one of the few times I've ever cried during a game. Unleashed was just... it was one of the things that helped me get through a rough patch in my life, and I can't thank it enough for that. And you know, I think that helps make it my favorite Sonic the Hedgehog game of all time. And now I feel so free, with endless possibilities. Sonic the Hedgehog has impacted my life in ways that I can't even begin to imagine. He's helped me through a lot of rough patches in my life. He's helped me develop a lot of my morals. Things like maintaining strong friendships, nothing starts until you take action, believe in your own dreams and chase them. You don't need a reason to help those in need. Follow your own path, follow your own heart. It's a series that's helped me keep positive and optimistic, you know? For one reason or another, we've all loved Sonic the Hedgehog at least at one point in our lives. Whether it was the games, or the TV shows, or the comics, or anything really, he holds some sort of value to us, and I think that's really cool that at least at one point in our lives, we could all come together and say, Sonic's pretty alright, you know? Happy birthday, Sonic the Hedgehog, and to many more. But for now, rest easy, hero.